Hold on, I don't have a recording.
So unusual.
Whenever you are ready.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Southborough Board of Health meeting on Tuesday, June 21st, 2022 at 9:30 a.m. This is a hybrid meeting, so we have folks in the room and online. All board members are present. And we do have a hard stop this morning at 10:50, so we'll try to move as quickly as we can through the agenda items. First order of business is public comment. If anybody has anything, feel free to raise your hand. Okay, thank you. And we're going to go a little bit out of order today, given that the Ken's team is here as well as the tech environmental team. So Mark and Patricia, I'm going to bring you over online. And David, if you want to come on up.
Sure.
And I am, David has a document that I'm going to project on the screen in here and on the Zoom room. So just give me 1 second to get that set up. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Good, and yourself?
Can I, do you care if I sit over there?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Mark, can you see my screen?
I can, yes.
All right. So David and Mark, do you want to kind of explain where you are at in terms of testing for the Ken's?
Sure. So, and Mark, just feel free to jump in if I've misspoken or left something out. This
Sure.
is technical scope is I drafted it to be with the bullet items to not to imply that there's an exact order of, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But just starting from the top, there's some sort of miscellaneous in the weeds details that I'd like to go after. For example, this first one is get some more individual reefer unit noise measurements, because the original study was just basically done with one data point, one particular reefer unit at one direction, because there's some likelihood of some directivity. In other words, like if you measure directly behind the reefer unit versus 180 degrees where it's being blocked by the trailer, usually that's there's some difference in frequency spectra and that sort of thing. Again, just sort of more detail to help with the modeling and such. And then the second bullet item is to obtain some more. So, and let me back up a little bit. When I say source, that's different than measuring, thousands of feet or hundreds of feet away from the noise source. In other words, the point is to try to characterize pretty close to whatever's making noise, so you're not influenced by other things making noise. So you can use that type of source noise data in the CAD modeling, and it's really pretty critical. Anyway, back to the second bullet item. I'd like to take some measurements of some truck pass-bys and idling. Now, these things are not, we know now that these truck idling and truck pass-bys, and when I say truck pass-bys, I'm specifically talking about trucks that are in the parking lot and eventually circle their way back out of the parking lot. And we already know from from our previous testing that this is not really the main issue at hand. The main issue at hand, of course, the reefer noise because of the low frequency sound that is emanating from that particular source. Let's see. Another point of interest is that we know that truck idling is not permitted, but it's something it is monitored by TENS. But if it were to happen, again, it's not supposed to happen, but if it were, it would be between the loading dock and the future noise barrier. So there would be, I think there may have been some concern about trucks idling on the other side of the noise barrier, and therefore the noise barrier would be doing anything for that type of noise. So that's the point of the second bullet item. Any questions thus far? Because we'll just kind of march right through this. Mark, do you have anything to add to that?
No, not at this point, no. I would just say one thing I just wanted to say up front was that, David and I have had, a couple of, 1 hour conversations sort of working through this process. So it's been a collaborative process, and I just wanted to point that out to the board.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Third one here is basically, we've already done some tests with on-site, which is super important. Modeling is great, but the measuring the real thing is very important. So we've already done some testing of that, but what I'd like to do, and Mark agrees, that I'd like to take the assumed maximum number of reefer units that were modeled in CADNet and actually set up a test of that, with those reefer units in the locations that were modeled in CADNet. Basically measure that, perform the same test that we did in March at the so-called benchmark location, which is 550 feet to the west of the parking lot. And it's, again, simple, very simple test. Reefers on, reefers off. And we would imagine that we'd be getting similar results to what we got last time, except this time we have more reefer units and in the location that they would be for real. Now, this last bullet item is a little bit in the acoustical testing weeds, but it's worth mentioning here that one of the challenges with before noise barrier construction and after barrier construction to determine how well did the noise barrier perform acoustically, and how did it compare to modeling, because there will always be differences between what you come up with in a CADNA model in terms of performance versus in situ or in installed results. And if you can imagine that there's some challenges with this sort of thing, because the chances of source reefer sound levels, 20 of these operating at the same time, the chances of that being exactly identical in the before test and after test, it's very unlikely that they're going to be exactly the same. And this is a common problem with testing noise barriers. There's an ANSI standard for this, which is, I think, on the next page probably. There it is, right there. ANSI 12.8, 1998, and there's a couple different methods that are provided in that standard to deal with this issue of the source noise levels being slightly different, possibly in the before and after conditions. And the method that we're hoping to pursue here is you put an instrumentation microphone approximately 1.5 meters above the top of the proposed sound wall, noise barrier, sorry. And so you say, here's where this sound wall would be, and we're going to get this microphone up. That's pretty high up in the air, obviously. Right? Yeah. And then you do the same thing after the same test after the noise barrier is constructed. So microphones in the same position, reefer units are in the same position. And that way, what that microphone allows you to do is you can say, okay, for the for the pre-noise barrier condition, exactly what we're measuring at that location. Again, you can think of that also as a source noise. Something that's relatively close to the source noise, so we're not being affected by other, ambient noise sources, right? And then the after condition, after the noise barrier is constructed, you have the same measurement, and it might be slightly different. And so therefore, you would calculate the noise barrier insertion loss a little bit differently for those two sets of data. A lot of jargon here, but insertion loss is basically, you can think of that as you're inserting something in the path, namely the noise barrier. And what's the improvement in decibels between with and without that noise barrier? That's the goal of that whole test. Let's see. So is that any questions on that test? Because that's probably the most technical.
No, I mean, I think that makes sense. And I think that was one of my follow-up questions after we met last time, was to make sure that whatever you come up with the best solution, that we make sure that the result is in line with what we were expecting.
Sure.
Right? And I think we know that there's some variation that can happen with that, but just as long as I think what you're saying is we want to be in the ballpark of what we're expecting.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And does that test to how high the wall is?
No, it's just, in other words, it's
tests to
just
the
it's just to say,
difference before the interruption.
yeah, it's just supposed to say what's the source level, because it will be different, because you can't, there's just no way you can have exactly the same reefers. Maybe I mean we'll control the reefer locations and all that stuff as best as we can, but there always will be some slight variation. So we don't, in other words, you can easily say, the noise barrier is not performing as well as predicted, but this type of measurement allows you to say, yeah, it did, because the after conditions say, I'm just saying, speaking hypothetically, after condition, the reefers were actually a little bit louder than they were in the pre-construction testing, right? So that meant, or vice versa.
Okay.
Yeah. So the height, the only reason for the height issue, it's a good question, is that to imagine trying to get that source level after the barrier is constructed, and say you're at grade. Well, the barrier's in the way, so you're gonna have that's a terrible test. Or say, well, we want to put it, let's put it at grade on the inside area of the noise barrier. Well, there's a potential reflection off the wall. So by putting it a meter and a half above the wall, you just eliminate, you have the same apples to apples comparison before and after. Does that make sense? Mark, did I state that? Was that?
Yeah. I know it's very difficult to sort of explain all that, technical information, but the essence of it is essentially, the way David has explained it is just trying to replicate, a before and after situation.
Okay, good. All right.
Sorry, Nancy, did you have a question?
So noted, where are we at with all this testing?
None of this has been done yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we.
Yeah. Well, so it's a good.
I don't know, it's like, I'm gonna really dumb this down, but I feel like this is just, I know things take time.
Well, it's a very good question, and it's what's one of the goals here is to make sure that Mark and I are on the same page, and that we're getting everything. We're checking out every box now, because and just to kind of back up a little bit, I made a sort of parenthetical mention this last meeting, but most of what's been done thus far in terms of the acoustics for this project is at the more of the environmental reviews level, like NEPA, I don't think it's that term, but environmental impact statements and EAs and that sort of thing. And it's perfectly suitable for that, but it's not suitable necessarily for a noise barrier design, where you want to, where you're interested in saying, okay, exactly how tall this would be, exactly where is it to be, what do the ends look like, all sorts of things that are done in like an engineering design. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
And we're doing this just to make sure everybody's on the same page before we actually do the testing, so that we don't have, after the testing's done, that we don't miss something.
Yeah.
So this is just kind of a touch point to make sure that we're all moving collaboratively.
And especially, if I could
Go
add
ahead.
something, especially, say, it's not only like, have we collected all the right data and have we done all the right analyses? But imagine, if you construct a noise barrier or something like that, and you didn't do, like, say, this.
Right, it doesn't work.
Well, no, it'll work, but say, I mean, I think it'll work, to some degree, no matter what.
Right.
That's from physics, right? But say you didn't do this ANSI standard test here, you might say, well, we think the after construction testing shows, here's what we got at the neighborhood locations. We think it's in line with what we model, but we're not sure because we didn't do that
Okay,
particular test. Does that make sense?
it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next bullet item is to continue with the same exact reefer setup, but this time at the community locations. And what Mark and I have worked on here and agreed on is to do these tests at up to 4 receiver locations, including these addresses you can see here: 48, 58, 68 Flag, and then 7 Eastbrook Farm Road. Now, obviously this type of test is what most people are interested in, what's going on in the neighborhood. But again, part of the challenge with this sort of thing is, say you're hundreds or thousands of feet away from the source, and then you've got ambient sound levels that are a bit out of your control, like from 9 and 45 and such. And so, you're performing this type of measurement that, with reefers on, reefers off, and say you're you've got your microphone system, and you say, okay, reefers off, okay, and you're listening, and then you turn reefers on. I don't hear any difference, which can happen, and all to say that does not diminish the neighbor's experience, because they live there, and so they're hearing these things all the time. And ambient conditions fluctuate. So hopefully we'll get some. For some of these sites here listed here, we'll be able to clearly hear reefers and measure them at these distances. Maybe some we won't because of those factors. And in some cases, well, anyway, enough said. I think that we'll see how it pans out in terms of those tests. But those, obviously those tests are very important.
So did these residents reach out to you to ask for a receiver to be placed?
I believe so.
48 did. And
Okay.
we included Deb's property,
Okay,
and I think they asked for 68, and they agreed that 7 Eastbrook was kind of at a lower level.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just have a quick question too. When you put the other wall up, because I've been on the board I don't remember all these meetings and stuff. I feel like we didn't have to get involved with all of this. How did that go?
When we did the other wall, we knew exactly what the issue was, and we knew that we were right on top of the residents. So we had to bring the wall close to the source,
Okay,
because there were trucks running in the back there.
okay.
And they were hearing trucks going over the pavement. There were all sorts of
But
noises.
did you do all these,
We did an analysis on what we felt was right and what the construction methodologies should be for the wall and the height
Okay.
and all of
And they
that.
were happy
Yeah,
with that. I just don't.
That was a different situation.
Yeah, in fact, could I add something?
Yeah, go
ahead.
So yeah, in my, because I was, the principal consultant for both of those.
Sure.
That, as Bill's indicating, that was pretty black and white situation in that, you could see the trucks easily from those
Right.
residential locations. Here, it was more about.
It wasn't the refrigeration and the
No.
idle.
And also the distances weren't as good. So in this case, it's a bit more of a challenge because the distances are sufficiently large such that, you might go out to the site again, like to one of these homes and say, I don't hear anything.
Right.
Right. So that makes it more challenging in terms of getting measurements, but also being able to exactly identify what is the problem. Right? And I think we finally, have a really good handle on that.
Right, well, I have 495 train tracks in my backyard and the sound can change, I know when I want to call anybody, there's a sting, I hear the police are pulling everybody over, at any given time, the noise is gonna be different. So I know it's
Yes. Move on.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this next bullet item is, again, not necessarily in this order, but to refine the CAD model to optimize the north end of the barrier and possibly the south end. Because again, the way we have the CAD model at the moment was just more of a environmental review level. And so we'd like to see what happens with the north, particularly with the north end of the sound wall in terms of some of these residential areas to the northwest of that area. And there's different ways to, optimize the coverage or protection area, the exact protection area of the noise barrier by doing that. And then I think we've already touched on this very last one, which is to conduct after noise barrier construction tests. So I think we've already touched on all that.
So did you and Mark discuss the placement of the wall? Because I know the model that you had was in the middle of the parking lot and the one Mark had was at the edge of the parking lot. Did you talk about the pros and cons of those two different approaches?
Yeah, I think, and Mark, I don't know if you want to weigh in on any of that now or, but I mean,
yeah, I think we've talked about it. And again, it's really about how the facility operates, and the concern obviously is about the reefer trucks, but we were also, my clients were also concerned about the idling trucks and the truck pass by. So I think these additional tests that we're doing, the spot measurements that we're doing, with the pass bys and the idling trucks will give us some additional information on their operations, and then we can see if in our modeling analyses if those things seem to bear out any additional fruit on that.
Just to add something else there, and this is sort of being a little bit redundant from what I believe I said last time, but noise barriers perform best when they're either close to the source, as close as you can get, really. The reason being is that you want to block the line of sight between a listener and the source as much as you can. So you have a really tall wall, or you get the wall really close to the source, or you could also have it really close to the receiver. In other words, really close to someone's house, but that's not terribly practical.
Yeah, right.
So the point being is that the wall, I understand the wall location around the perimeter of the parking lot, but it's not really, it will, by definition, just from physics, just pure, brute force physics, will not achieve the same as good performance as a wall that's really close to the reefers. However, I understand, again, Mark and I have been talking about all these things. And I understand the concern that, say, if trucks were just in and out of the facility constantly circling around the perimeter of the parking lot, and that was the main noise source. Well, that's a different story, because then we want to have the wall close to those sources. But thus far, our data shows that you can, at least from the, like say, the benchmark location, 550 feet, you can barely hear those trucks versus the reefers. So there's so Mark has put this well that these other tests that we'll do should show that, confirm what I just said.
Okay. Do you have? Go ahead, Tom.
And if you and Mark come to agreement on the height of the wall. In terms of that.
Well, we don't, again, it's a little bit premature because, I mean, the taller the better,
Right,
but then there's a physical limit,
Mhm.
In terms of like, you could, at some point, you can make the wall taller and taller and taller, and
Right.
it does nothing.
Right.
And so, right now it's, what I've modeled is pretty pretty tall.
Yeah, I think the important thing is, in that design is that there are no gaps, in the construction, David knows this, and making sure there's no leakage of sound, either at the ground level or, in the, between the panels and that kind of thing.
Do you have any other questions?
No.
Okay. I just have a few more questions.
Sure, go for it.
So what's the timing of the testing and timing, like when you're gonna start, and then when are you actually gonna do it? And do you need anything from us or any other logistical help in terms of working with residents?
Well, I'll say this, I don't believe we need any more logistics help from the board.
Okay,
Certainly Mark and I have our homework, we have our work cut out for us.
Yeah.
Although this is, we've both done this sort of thing a lot, so it's not, it's it's a predictable path that we're on.
Okay.
I would imagine, Mark and I haven't talked about exactly, what date we're starting on this, but I imagine it's gonna happen pretty soon.
like July, you think?
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay,
And there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of things in the weeds, like getting a microphone up to 25 feet in the air.
Yeah.
And, cabling is, there's just a lot of details.
okay. But you're confident that you're working towards a 9/1 date for a plan?
Yeah, I would say,
Okay.
oh, yeah.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
that
oh, yeah.
we're all-
And I'll give you an update. I met with
Okay.
town council and the planner last week and the
Okay.
chair for the planning board. And we were looking at that time frame of September, October to get back before them with a plan that shows the ultimate design, because we have to go to them before we can build it.
Right.
And then how long does construction typically take for this?
Oh, I don't know, it depends. Depends on getting materials.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as we know what we're building.
Yeah.
And we're confident that it's gonna go forward, we'll probably put placeholders on all the materials and the contractors. I mean, we'd like to get it built in November sometime. So, yeah,
Yeah.
before
For
the
the
winter.
winter, yeah.
Yeah.
That would.
That's always been our goal. I'm anticipating that when we go back to planning on this one issue, that it'll just be a one night discussion, hopefully. And, we can get it open, closed and move on. So the 20-day appeal period can run and then we can build.
Yeah.
Hurry up and leave.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're all kind of going, we're all paddling in the same direction here.
Great.
I think what we needed to hear from you guys today, though, is that you believe this protocol is appropriate and this is the way we should be going. Because like you said, we want everybody to agree on the protocol. And at the end of the day, we don't want somebody claiming foul.
Right.
Okay?
Right,
You know?
it sounds like you're all in.
Yeah, I mean,
You're all
Mark,
on the same page.
Mark-
Yeah.
anything that you want to raise based on that comment?
Yeah, I think, I think I was the one that sort of suggested the process of doing a collaborative process, so that way we wouldn't have this back and forth. I think this minimizes that approach. And, as I said before, David and I have had, some detailed conversations about the process. And there is some additional homework that we need to work out on some of the details, but I think this is a good sort of overview of our approach that I think is acceptable to both of us. Just stepping back to one of the points that David made about the monitoring in the neighborhoods. The good thing about this one here, I believe anyways, is that, he and I will be out there doing those testing, and it's what I call attended monitoring. So not only do we have the sound meter there, but we're also taking field notes as to what's audible and what's not audible. And then we can go back in time and look at, at the data with our field notes. And so I think that's going to be very helpful. And I think it will hopefully maybe ease some of the concerns by the neighbors and, and hopefully the board.
And I think it's helpful, they're gonna have 20 reefer trucks, right, going on.
Correct, right,
because,
correct.
Yeah, that normally doesn't
Very,
happen, but
right.
that's the
It
max.
just varies.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And then is there anything that takes into account like bounce back off the wall, back onto the building and back
Oh, yeah.
out?
Oh, yeah.
That's part of your CAD
Oh, yeah,
model?
yeah, you can,
Okay.
yeah, all that stuff is you model the absorption characteristics of facades and,
Okay,
and by the way, that's why, you know, I haven't specified this exactly, Mark and I haven't got into this exactly, but you know, my report originally said that the both sides of the barrier should be at NRC 0.9 within NRC is noise reduction coefficient. It's one, a value of 1 is completely absorptive.
okay,
Sound absorptive, so sound does not bounce off the wall. So 0.9 is, you know, about as good as you can get.
okay,
And that's something that's been in the noise barrier industry. That's something that's been in place for, gosh, 20 years, where you know,
Okay.
to have sound absorptive material that is that lasts environmentally. So,
that's good.
yeah.
I'm gonna allow public comment during this section, just because I know we have a lot of people online. So if you want to raise your hand, Debbie, would you like to come up? If you have any comment online, please feel free to raise your hand and I'll bring you over. Next.
Yeah, good morning. I just want to say thank you to Ken and thank you to David and the board for continuing on this matter. I think we're making really good progress. I do have one question because we have both sound engineers here. When I looked at some of the testing for some of the other warehouse facilities in the area, Westboro and Northborough, some big warehouse facilities have gone in where they were able to test for ambient. The lowest ambient is overnight between like 2 and 4 a.m. And so this will serve as a baseline for post-construction compliance, right? So I'm just wondering, is there anything lacking from this protocol from either your perspectives or specific to the timing? 8 p.m. tends to be a time where there's still heavy traffic. Is it, would you get better results, for example, if you took the tests at 2 in the morning?
Possibly, yeah, possibly. In the sense that, say, ambient levels dropped, you know, a lot more, you know, at 2 a.m. versus 8 p.m., you know, and then say, you say, oh gosh, you know, I would actually measure reefer noise that you couldn't otherwise measure because the levels were higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's always a consideration, and you know,
Is it possible to add in another point at 2 a.m. just so, I mean, I know that this is an attended monitoring, right? So I don't mean for you guys to stand out there all night, but I think because for those of us who are hearing the noise, a lot of, you know, hearing it mainly overnight.
yeah, I
And
understand, yeah.
is there any way to capture that or can it be modeled?
Well, I mean, there, okay, just to try to get this brief, because it's, you know, I could go on and on, unfortunately.
And I can talk to you forever, but.
Yeah, well, it's all good. So, you know, we do have obviously a lot of ambient data from the first go around, so we can see pretty, you know, because that was done over multiple days. And we can actually look and see, we haven't done this, but
Right.
to say, hey, how much does the sound level drop between, say, 8 and 2 a.m. or 3 a.m.?
You're talking about the data from before the other sound barrier wall was.
No. What we did like,
Oh, in March?
yeah, well, no, even before that, when we did like 4 or 5 days of ambient.
He's talking about the May 2020 study. Yeah.
Oh, but that's not real ambient because we're not able to take the facility offline, right?
Well, true, but we can't take it off now
Right.
either, right?
Right.
So anyway, I'm just saying that would be a really interesting thing to do, given your good point to raise, to say like, you know, what happened to sound levels between 8 and 2 a.m. for instance. Right? So that's a starting point. Another thing that often is done, and Mark, I'm sure can attest to this, is, you know, because I've been doing this sort of thing for 35 years, and stayed up all night. And in fact, we did this the first go around.
Right.
We had people sitting on lawn chairs 24/7 for that sound, for the other sound, because we wanted to document like what is going on exactly, right? So I think, you know, what can happen in a situation like this is, I mean, I do think that we should be starting things up relatively early, just to have something,
Yeah.
right? And then you make a judgment call while you're there, say, you know, because like, for instance, here's a for instance, say at 8:30 or 8 or whatever the time is, say we're at one of these addresses and we do this test of reefers on, you know, and again, it's a lot, it's 20 reefers. And you say, whoa, you know, I can actually feel it and measure it. That's that's a good thing. Now, if you can hear it, of course, that's also, you know, in some ways a good thing, right? But the point being is that I've certainly, and Mark, and I, you know, I'm sure he has some tales as well to tell, but I've certainly been in situations where you make a decision in the field where you, based on what I just said, like say you can either hear it or you can't hear it. Say you can't hear it at any of the locations, or say you hear it at a couple or something like that. Then you might make a decision on the spot to say, let's just hang out here for another, you know, let's go get some coffee and come back. And let's get a lot of coffee.
Okay, so there's flexibility in the process.
Well, yes, but also just making some judgment call, because let me back up a little bit. You know, one of the challenges here, as I mentioned, is that, you know, the unattended monitoring was useful, but what Mark just pointed out is super important, because at this last test that we did in March, both Jim and I could easily hear this problem, right? At this 550 locations, you can measure it, you can hear it, and so therefore having that capability again with this test, you know, should shed light on, you know, on having that, you know, make a decision to stick around longer or not.
I guess what you're saying is if you're hearing it at 8 p.m., you're going to almost definitely be hearing it louder at 2 a.m. because it's less needed.
Right, yeah. But if you don't hear it, then
Right.
then it raises the question, well, gosh, if we stuck around till 2 a.m., would you?
Okay, so it'll be a judgment call in the field.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that, Mark, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think, you know, as David and I have spoken about, you know, there's a lot of testing that's going to be done, and we're hoping to do it all in, you know, one day, so to speak, one day, one evening period of time. So, you know, but, you know, I think we've agreed that, you know, that the testing of some of the stuff, by the time we coordinate things with Ken's Foods and getting the reefer trucks where they're supposed to be and everything else, you know, I anticipate that we're going to be out there for an extended period of time anyway. So we may be out there, you know, until, you know, late evening anyway. You know, so we'll be able to track that. And again, the attended monitoring is critical. So when we go to each of the neighbors' homes, you know, we'll probably be coordinating a little bit with the homeowners as well, saying, you know, we plan to be at these locations. And if they want to come out and listen as well, they can do that as well while we're doing our monitoring.
And Mark, this was, yeah, forgive me here, but Mark, you and I haven't talked about this, but would you be able to, I was thinking after you and I talked, it might be really wise for us to scope some of this stuff out, some of these locations out in advance of the testing.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Yeah, you mean like go out for a site visit, David, you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. West, I'm going to bring you over.
Oh, can you hear me? Hi,
Yeah.
I'm Brad West, 48 Flag Road. I just want one quick question. Actually, I guess statement first. I want to thank Ken's for your support on this. I really appreciate the collaboration from the homeowners. My only question is relating to the wall. Are you guys have any plans to kind of optimize the effectiveness of the wall? Basically, like, would you kind of keep the reefer trucks on that side of the wall, or like, you know, I guess how would you handle that? Is there any plans or initiative to kind of go with that going forward?
Is your question about operations, like the?
Yeah, exactly. So like the
All right.
wall is fantastic, but if, you know, they're all on the other side of the wall, obviously it's not going to maximize the effectiveness.
Great question.
Yeah, the reefers are primarily on that side anyhow, waiting and pre-cooling to pull up to the dock, or they're at the dock. So they're in the location where they're normally going to be, and they're usually in those 10 bays closest to Route 9 anyhow, because that's where the refrigeration part of the facility is. So yeah, it's controlled, but it's controlled using what day-to-day affairs will probably look like there, except you probably won't ever have 20 in it at one time there.
Yeah, so your standard flow, it's basically just going to follow your standard flow then. Awesome, perfect, thank you.
And that is what we observed at our site visit, was that they were in the first, along the bays, and then in that first row cooling. So that's consistent, Brad.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else on Ken's? No, okay, so in terms of timing for when you would need us again, I don't know that you know that right now.
No, we
So if
don't.
you can just reach out to us, we're scheduled for July 12th. But we're always willing to add something if needed, so just let us know. We don't want to hold you up. We want to keep the progress going, so anything you need from us, just reach out and we'll schedule, or we'll add you to the July 12th if that timing works out for you. Just keep us posted.
Why don't you tentatively put us on for the 12th?
Okay,
We'll see where we are. We'll report to you
okay,
if they've gotten far enough along. I don't know if they would have done all their CAD and modeling and
right,
design yet,
okay.
but we may be able to report and say, yeah, we've been out in the field, we've done all the testing.
We're
We've started.
we're still moving.
Yeah. we're still
Okay.
moving.
All right, and thank you, Mark, for joining this morning and for your input. And David, Bill, Jim, thank you for coming. Debbie, thanks for your input. And we really appreciate your attention to moving forward on this. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask the question one more time. I want to make sure we're all okay with the protocol. You kind of all nodded your heads and everything, but I want to make sure
Yeah.
the record
Yes.
shows that.
I mean, David and Mark are really the
Yeah.
They're the
experts,
leaders.
so I'm happy
If
that
the two of
they're
them are.
on the
yeah.
same page. So yes, I think it makes sense.
Okay.
And we're happy to be moving forward.
Great,
So thank you very much for coming.
thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time
All right.
and
Thanks,
your
Mark.
involvement.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Next, we're gonna go to reinspection for Fitzgeralds. And I'm gonna bring over Mr. Patel. And my understanding is that Dr. Alker and our per diem inspector went out to re-inspect Fitzgerald's yesterday. Do you want to give a high level overview of that?
Yeah, we went for well, to back up, I also wanted to note that although I haven't spoken with the building commissioner a little bit, I believe the requirements there, the stairs have been rebuilt completely on the outside of the building, which was their biggest concern. And those are completely brand new. The access to the second floor, it's an outdoor staircase. And then I did touch base with Lieutenant Dano. They did do some of the work with capping of this oil tank that they were supposed to do. So he, he's still following on a couple more things, but he's pleased with the progress being made there. And Bill Murphy inspected yesterday. And in terms of sort of the food safety and priority, which are, there were 0 violations. So that was definitely an improvement. They've removed all the kitchen equipment, so they're only operating with coffee service and I think slushy or ice cream. But they're not doing the actual cooking, if you will. So that was good. And most of the clutter is cleared out from the basement. That was one thing as well. And he had some violations noted with the dumpster that should always be closed. Still harbinger and things where pests could get in. The door from the basement that leads outside has a pretty big gap, so they weren't flashing there. But the biggest kind of priority items, I've been speaking with Mr. Patel about the 2 things the board wanted to hear about, which was the expiration, and that's obviously a priority violation. There were no expired items yesterday, so that's reassuring. They are starting to implement, I got the kind of sort of sheet, I gave it to Chelsea, with the plan for different employees, different items a couple days a week that they will be assigned to do, the employees to do, so that everything's checked on at least a weekly basis. And also with the pest reports, I got the latest 2 reports, there is still area for harbingers of pests. Bill Murphy and I thought we saw maybe some evidence of perhaps squirrel or something casings from something that was in there potentially. I'm not sure which type of animal, but they're twice a month. They've moved up to twice a month, and I think Chelsea's going to talk a little more about that because she's spoken with the pest control agent. But
I did, yeah, so I
Those were
had a
the
nice,
highlights.
I had a nice conversation with the pest control management company last week. And she is going out twice a month. She's scheduled to go out this coming Thursday. The last time she'd been out there, I believe, was June 10th. And she said that not all of the bait had been consumed, which is good. So that was an improvement from the last several
We didn't
years,
see
I
any
think.
rodent dropping.
Okay.
Which is good.
Yeah.
So she does have some suggestions to improve on the rodent issue there that I think that we should require Fitzgeralds to do. There's really 3 things that she was looking for. There's some holes in the foundation that need to be filled. So that would be one. The second one is, I think they're trying to leave their doors open, but they don't have screens at the doors.
Oh.
So I would suggest that they add screened doors, so that way they're not having
Right.
things flying or, things coming in. And then the third one is to cut out like the weeds and the long grass like around the building,
Right.
so that things aren't burrowing. So she was in agreement that going out twice a month did make sense for now to
Okay,
kind
great.
of get them going. So I think with then the flashing that Bill Murphy had flagged. So I think those 4 things. Did you get an update on the tile replacement?
They've done some of they didn't redo the whole floor, but they did do, and they're in process of doing in that kitchen area, kind of the most concerning areas for uneven flooring.
Okay.
And so I think Bill was okay with flooring.
Okay, so I would suggest that we get another report from the pest control management company prior to our next meeting before we issue a permit. I just want to make sure that whatever mitigation they can put in place, they do it to try to reduce any issues that they have.
to fix, rodent, they can get in the smallest.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and she did have some good suggestions, so
Sure,
I would encourage them to
Yeah.
continue to work with them. Mr. Patel, I'm just gonna, you can go ahead and unmute if you would like, based on the comments that have been made. But I think overall, good progress. I think
Yeah.
there's
Yeah,
still
I think
some,
so.
oh, and then the other thing is, I think they have a format now to track expired food. I'd like to see that filled out
Oh,
Yeah.
for our next meeting, so we
absolutely,
can
yeah.
actually see that they're filling that out. Mr. Patel, are you there? I'm gonna ask you to unmute and see if that helps.
Yeah, I am here. Do you heard me?
Good morning,
yeah,
how are you?
Yeah, yeah, good morning, good morning. Yeah, so like one issue like you talking about for the like grass cutting. Actually, I gave the contract, so this guy gonna done this weekend for the like and some of the like grass is from the like MBT's responsibility because that's like they own the property. So I take care about that one. And another like a couple issues from the health department, I'm gonna take care of this before this weekend.
Very good.
Okay, so you followed the conversation with the suggestions from the pest control management company?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll put this on for our July 12th
Yeah.
meeting and ask for an update from pest control. And in the motion, I'll list out the items that we're looking for.
Right,
Okay.
as well as the expiration worksheet filled out.
I'm just writing it down so I don't
Yeah.
forget any of the items. Hold on.
Foundation, door.
Yeah, I'm missing one. Oh, cut grass and fill out form. Okay. Okay. So I move that the Board of Health continue to inspect Fitzgeralds and we'll look for an update on July 12th related to installation of screen doors, flashing on doors, plugging cement in the foundation, cutting grass along the building, and filling out their food expiration form.
I second the motion.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, Mr. Patel, we'll be in touch to come out again prior to July 12th. And we'll also touch base with your pest control company.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you for
All right, back up to the top. So we're at number 3, vote contract for Bill Murphy, alternate inspector for FY '23. So this is just extending Bill Murphy. He's the health director in Sudbury, and he was nice enough to help us out while we're kind of in limbo with food inspections.
Yeah.
So he's filled in for Dennis throughout the year when Dennis has been on vacation. I think it's worked out really well. So I'll move that we approve a contract for Bill Murphy, the alternate inspector for FY '23.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, we did the inspection. Okay, FY '22 budget update. So I just wanted to give the board an update. I think Barbara circulated the actual to budget for FY '22. And we are in line with the contracted services line, which is which essentially pays for Bill and Dennis to do all of our inspections. And Carla's working through, in terms of the revolving account, the flu vaccination line item. So she's still working through how to deal with that in the revolving account. So more to come on that one.
Okay.
And then she's also working on the salaries for the health director and the nurse related to FEMA. So
Okay.
I know it looks like we're in the negative on that, but I think she's gonna work with advisory on
Great.
on that. So I just wanted to let you guys
Yeah,
know,
no,
nothing to
that's
do on
great.
our side, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to give you an update.
Wonderful.
That's great.
All right, next is scholarship awarded for training for public health nurse. So this is for Taylor was granted admission into a training program. They opened up extra slots for public health, which they don't normally do.
Oh,
So,
great.
so Taylor was, I'm excited that she got accepted into this program.
Yeah,
So she'll
great.
be going to some some trainings throughout the year. I think they're Fridays and Saturdays, through the end of the year, right?
Yeah, there's 4.
Yeah.
Actually.
So just wanted the board to be aware
Sure, sure.
that she
That's
will
great.
be participating in that. So that's very exciting for her. So
Very
congratulations.
nice. Congratulations.
Be looking forward to hearing about it.
Yeah.
Okay, meeting minutes for 6/7. That was a quick
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
Any changes on those?
No.
Okay, so I move that we accept the meeting minutes for June 7th, 2022.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, plan for intern. Heather, do you want to take that one?
So Bill Christian is coming from UMass, he's a Preventive medicine resident. And he will be here in July and August, 8 to 10 hours a week, both in person and virtual. And some of the things we had discussed were looking at noise regulations, other projects, as well as sort of a couple day-to-day projects, but other projects is looking at our air sensors and air pollution, which I'm working on as well. I'm meeting with schools next week about potentially putting some event or curriculum in there with our new air sensors. And then the other thing, we were looking at a fall kind of wellness fair for lifestyles. And he may help us get some information and that we can use to update our website and, present at the fair. So those are kind of different areas. I know we spoke about the noise regulations before. That kind of stems from the when we worked on the noise bylaw in town, we had initially put forward basically DEP's plan about stationary, also known as industrial noise, into that, and then town council and others thought that that shouldn't be there. So as a board, do we want to kind of put that as a statement for our board, kind of endorsing that policy versus we could put it in as the board as sort of a more stricter one potentially. I think some folks have looked into that. I'm not sure new towns have yet done it. That's kind of, when I have a contact at Mass DEP who works on noise, and she said, we always talk to businesses, we encourage the 5 decibel above baseline, especially at night. I didn't know that it's kind of in anyone's regulations yet, but we can look into that further.
And I think understanding what process people should go through in terms of if there's a complaint and what the, XYZ needs to be done. I think that almost, I think, is
Right.
more
for our
important to get,
residents,
yeah.
right, what,
Yeah.
Right, and I think we spoke a little bit about, but the website, potentially, that wasn't a good site to have a complaint
We
form
don't
or
know
something.
yet.
We don't know.
So Jay is working to meet with the vendor of the website to see if it's a possibility.
Okay.
To intake form.
He was not super optimistic though,
Oh, no.
so we'll see basically where we're at with it. He hasn't had a date set for the meeting.
Okay. And then I think if we can work with Mass DEP to come up with options.
Yeah.
For us to review, I think that would be good. Okay.
Well, just for some clarification. So is the board thinking of a policy when you say rules and reg, you mean like a bylaw versus a policy? Is that what you're weighing?
So I don't think we would need to do a bylaw because it's already a state reg. So I think it's more of policy and procedure for residents and businesses to follow as we would be able to control it.
So what would it do aside from like what's already in place under Mass General Law?
It's more on how people can go about it. Like if you have a noise complaint, this is what the board would require you to go through. Like what we're dealing with right now with Ken's, like we didn't have a policy for it to be followed. So we're kind of just piecing it together, right? And trying to come up with a resolution without really having a process.
Right.
So I think at least what I'm looking
I
for
think so.
is so that we don't spin our wheels for a long period of time. If there's a complaint, then this is the report and study that needs to be done within, a certain amount of time, and it comes to the board, and then whatever process would follow. That's what I'm looking for, so that we're not, kind of
3 years out?
right. Well, that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Yeah, and I think that would be beneficial, I think,
Yeah,
for everybody to have to know what the process is. I'm just trying to understand, many towns do have, well, I don't think they call it stationary noise, but I do think that many towns incorporate all noise into their bylaw. And, I mean, I see that possibly our noise bylaw would be amended at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so I would just ask that maybe keep open to that, especially if you're gonna stray away a little bit from Mass DEP, which has, it's not perfect, right?
Yeah.
It's air quality. Okay, so and timing in terms of like what you're thinking about?
I mean, I'm hoping that
And
this
the
intern
process,
can take
Yeah,
the
right.
summer to do,
Right.
to at least come up with a draft
Yeah.
for us. That's at least what I'm hoping.
That's
for.
what I was thinking by the fall.
So would it help businesses that are already functioning, for example? Would it apply to businesses that are already, to all businesses, for example, in town?
I don't know. I think we need to see
Well, who would be exempt if we had one? What kind of business would be exempt
Well,
anyway?
so for, I'm just, what I'm thinking of is, and you know, I'm exempt from the planning board activities around this, but the planning board is putting together there's a draft decision, you know, that they've been working on. And typically, when you have a bylaw, they'll mention the bylaw in their decision. So there's a lighting bylaw. So basically says to the applicant, you just have to follow this bylaw. But it never says to the applicant, like, you have to follow that. you know,
Policy.
That policy.
Yeah,
So
Right.
that would be a benefit
Okay.
of having a bylaw, is for the permitting boards to just say,
yeah.
okay, we're not gonna deal with that. You just have to follow what the Board of Health has put out for
Got it.
bylaw.
Okay.
So I think I understand the question. In terms of being exempt, you're saying from following whatever process we come up with. I feel like we're too far down the road to go backwards.
Oh, it's
to-
not,
Right.
it's not for Ken, they just.
Oh,
for
okay,
existing-
okay.
Just for existing,
No, I
I
think,
guess it has to apply to existing businesses,
yes,
right?
yes.
Right.
But the current process that we're in,
Right.
I think we're close to a resolution, so I wouldn't
Right.
want to go backwards and say,
Right.
oh, we missed this part in the,
Right. Yeah.
in the process we
Yeah,
just
no,
developed. Like, I'm not
right.
interested in, I don't think
Right.
you are either, but
No.
but it's so that we have a process
Yes.
going
Yeah.
forward, so we're
Yeah.
not,
Yes, I would just urge you to think about policy versus bylaw, which it sounds like you are,
yeah,
and that the thing about and I don't know which way I fall, like, I don't know, I haven't studied this, but I do know that it's a bylaw, like lighting bylaw, which falls into zoning, and so does noise emission. This is why the planning board has taken it up. It would be quite interesting to have something for the permitting boards to just say,
I
and you
understand.
have to follow that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not gonna deal with that, but you just have to follow that. That's our town bylaw.
Got it.
So I
Yeah.
just wanted to-
Okay, good point. Thank
you.
you. All right. Anything else on? Okay. Thank you. Okay, COVID reports.
So our COVID numbers in town are slowly going down.
Very good.
The wastewater data is also slowly coming down. It kind of keeps doing this like bouncy wave that doesn't
Yeah.
ever quite go down, but we're getting there. Last week, just a note, was the last week of full testing in schools, so that won't be a factor anymore. And the CDC county level data for Worcester County and Middlesex County are both low this past week, which is great. And we recently did a successful booster clinic aimed targeted towards 5 to 11-year-olds. We vaccinated about 280 residents. And then over yesterday, UPH approved our under fives. So we will be working with the Greater Boroughs Group to make a plan for that. We do know that for this particular vaccine, there's a lot of doctor's offices that are going to be administering it. So depending on that data, which hopefully I'll find out this week from the Greater Boroughs intern, depending on that, we may leave it to the pediatrician's offices to vaccinate, but we'll have to see kind of where the data falls.
I just had a question. I know there was some concern about the testing with kids heading back to other countries from some of the private schools. Did that all get
It's all
worked
set.
out?
It's all
Yeah.
set.
And I know that our boroughs interns working on information to distribute to
Yeah.
families
Yeah.
of under fives.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a different kind of
It is.
population.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I think,
Don't do babies.
I think it would be harder for us to run a clinic for that
Yeah.
age. I just,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
and I think families would feel comfortable. with it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we do have a pool of qualified individuals who would be willing to help us with a clinic. It's just not as many people. And most of our regulars who are used to how we run our clinics aren't interested in doing this age group because it is so different.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we won't do it, but just a lot more logistical questions and people being comfortable with the age group.
Right.
And there's a lot of moving parts. There's 3 doses if you do Pfizer,
Right.
2 if you Moderna,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you have 4 to 5 where Pfizer is not approved for age
Yeah.
4 to 5. Only Moderna is approved for 4 to 5. So there's a lot of moving parts and it's So getting all that ironed out, follow-up appointments, and
Yeah.
that is going to be quite challenging.
I feel like that age group is going to their pediatricians
Well, I think
pretty
you know, more-
regularly.
Well, that's
anyways.
the other thing, you know, if you're under the age of 2, you're gonna have a visit with your pediatrician in the
Right.
next few months. So,
Right.
you know, I think that that's probably okay.
So
to
I
wait,
know,
you
like,
know.
for example, Reliant is planning on doing clinics for existing patients.
Right.
So they'll do like multiple clinic dates and then that will be, they'll probably, I'm guessing do at least one, if not two.
Right.
And then,
Yeah.
that'll be it.
So more to come.
The DPH have found we haven't really, hasn't been a lot of movement since last week on getting the vaccine out. So I think there's a lot of waiting right now, for at
So
least for another week or so. I
So
think,
we
till
were,
get-
we had the option of pre-ordering,
Right,
but I think a lot of municipalities felt like we're not sure what we're gonna do.
Right,
It
right.
depends on what pediatrician's
Right,
offices
right.
in town do.
Mhm.
So we chose to wait to
I
see,
think that's a good
because we
idea.
didn't want to have the vaccine and then not utilize
I
it.
think that's a great idea.
Tobacco regulations.
Yeah, a couple things. I have had Elizabeth Leiden from our town council review our draft to date, but there was still one outstanding question was about rolling paper.
Yeah.
If, I think staff got ready, but I don't think the others did. So the draft regulations didn't specify, but there's two things when you think about rolling paper. One is sort of the flavored one,
Mhm.
and that you could just define as a flavored product. Basically, you just kind of say, you know, flavored rolling paper is considered a flavor enhancer, and then that would be, take care of that. The other is if rolling paper sort of in general, if we want to, other towns haven't done it, but if the way the state regulations were updated recently, it's now an option. Legally, the towns can put that in. I spoke with our inspector, Olivia. She said, again, other towns haven't done that for the general rolling paper ban, but she felt it would be feasible. Some of the product is on the shelves now. When we approve the regulations, we would put an effective date, you know, that would give them some time to get rid of the product that they do have on rolling paper. But that's sort of what she thought. She felt it was doable from an inspection standpoint. So I wanted to know from you guys about flavored rolling paper and all rolling to put into our regulations.
So staff, are you waiting on this?
I think all rolling
We
paper.
waited.
To eliminate all of it.
We waited.
Okay.
I definitely think the
Flavored, absolutely.
Um,
Yeah,
I'm a little torn on the
Yeah.
other one. There are some,
Yeah.
you know, people who
yeah,
are, don't have the money to.
yeah, and it hasn't
I mean, I
really
wish
done
they'd
one,
quit,
but
but I
was,
mean,
but
we're
I
not
don't
gonna be
think it's
able to.
really been done
Yeah.
yet. the right,
Okay.
have to-
on other
Yeah,
things. So
okay.
that sounds
So-
reasonable.
I'm good with taking out the flavored.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think. we should
and then,
definitely
I
do
mean,
that.
we'll have a hearing on this. too.
Yeah, so that was I think one
I-
option. We could just put it in there and have a hearing and see.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or we could just do just the flavor for now,
Sure.
see how the.
Okay.
times
I think
go.
that's okay. I think
It's up
that's,
to you.
yeah.
Put in the flavor for
Put in the
now.
flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then actually, I don't, at this step, don't need to have the council re-review, so that's.
So what's the
Um,
timing,
yeah.
Heather?
Okay, so the council has re-reviewed. I just wanted to let you know, they had minor
Mhm.
revisions other than one point, which is about sale of flavored tobacco product. The way it had been written is no person shall possess, hold, keep, sell, or distribute. And what the town council said is the Board of Health authority is to no person shall sell or distribute. So she took out possess, hold, or
Okay.
keep, that that's not our Board of Health authority.
Right.
That's
Okay.
fair.
That,
Yeah.
yeah, and that was really her only
Okay.
That makes
significant
sense.
That
comment.
makes sense,
There was
right.
a couple other things or wordings or things that were unclear.
Mhm.
So I think we have our draft. We have next to do a public hearing, and I spoke with Jim Hegarty because our town bylaws are changing.
Right.
So if it happens, we do now and sometime in mid or late August, we basically per town, we post it like planning board does
Yeah.
as part of the agenda, that it's a public hearing.
Yeah.
If,
But you have to advertise it, right?
yeah, I mean, Jim Hegarty, right, I mean, it depends what we're gonna do it, but that's our next step is to, hold this public hearing.
Okay.
If we're gonna put the, relative flavored in there and, we
Take
have a
out the-
draft,
Okay.
so, yeah, I think it's sort of up to us when we want to, set the date for the public hearing.
September, is that somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah, when people are more.
People are
People are back.
and stuff. So-
Yeah, and so that'll
Mhm.
probably be in September, under our newer bylaw
Mhm.
will have gone into effect,
Okay.
which is fine.
Right.
That means I think there's kind of a separate posting for the public hearing, but that's all fine. When the bylaw is approved, the Board of Health will be required to post a hearing notice and will continue to post the agenda for the meeting, which would include the hearing. The proposed change in the town bylaw, posting notice of hearings will go into effect about late August.
Yeah.
Okay,
Notices can be combined,
yeah,
combined with
the
the
agenda.
meeting agenda.
Okay.
So yeah, I think
don't think
September
we
makes
write,
sense.
so.
For this type of hearing, does it make sense for us to do it after work hours and not?
I think so.
During the day?
I think so. I think that would
Yeah.
probably make the
Yeah.
most sense.
And
Yeah.
we can also do
Yeah.
it, get, that month's board stuff done as
Yeah,
well,
at
either
that same
before.
time.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
No, I agree. I was just thinking for the public to be able
Right,
to
right,
Yeah.
attend
Yeah.
if, I mean, I think sometimes during the day is better for people, but I just would want to make
Yeah.
sure
Yeah,
that.
I think
Okay.
that's,
Like at
that's,
5 o'clock. Yeah,
Yeah.
should we survey people about early September or what? I
Sure.
mean, for you three?
I think that works. I have nothing.
yeah, evenings are fine with me, evening,
Okay.
probably 6 o'clock-ish, a little, not 5, but.
I would
6
do
o'clock
seven,
-ish,
I would
yeah.
do 7.
7 even
Yeah,
better, yeah,
yeah.
people have dinner, say,
Yeah.
get all that done, so.
Is there a better day of the week for,
Depends on me, your board meeting, but selectmen meeting, right?
yeah,
Whatever,
so the
select board
6th and the
meeting.
20th, I probably have a select meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to do, I mean, we could do a different day. We could do Monday. If that's
Yeah, I mean,
better.
I can, any day of the week would work for me, so
All right.
that's not a problem.
Do you want to do like,
Well, for the 19th.
that's what I was gonna say.
All right.
Wow.
I think the 19th might be better for me.
Okay.
Okay.
September 19th, perfect.
Is there gonna be, is there a planning board meeting that night? Where do you, are you the, I can't remember, are you the 2nd and the 4th Mondays? I'm looking.
I just monthly right now.
Yeah, the only thing is
what?
Wednesdays would
It's
be
just
out because of school committee.
Oh, it's monthly.
So,
Not Wednesday.
yeah, not Wednesdays.
You could join Board of Health and be every
Yeah.
Debbie. We did get last week off, but there's nothing.
There'll be a vacancy in May.
That's September 19th.
I need to recruit for that right now.
You do need to recruit. Yeah, I don't have that date.
Okay, all right. If we have to
We'll
move,
look, yeah,
we'll
we'll
look.
look around, because I'm not quite certain.
All right, perfect. And next meeting is July 12th.
Yeah.
And then do we want to pick our August date now?
Sure.
Which as of right now, will have to be in person.
Right,
So Safner, if you
Yeah,
can share that meeting.
absolutely, yeah.
How about August 16th?
That should be fine.
That should be fine for me.
Okay.
Actually, that's actually a good
Okay.
day for me.
Okay.
That's the best day in August for me.
Okay.
That's what?
That's the best day of August for me.
Oh,
So that
great.
works out perfectly.
Yeah.
The one.
The one day.
who Wants to chair a meeting.
The one day that works the best for me. is August
Okay.
16th, so that's great.
9:30 here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that works really
All
well.
right, perfect. Okay. All right. Public comment.
You're not going to escape.
Can you do it in
That's
4
okay.
minutes or less?
That's our last-
Okay, can you?
Easily enough.
Okay,
So, but I do have probably 4 things.
okay.
So, first is on the noise
Mhm.
discussion. I think there are really 3 things that you're talking about, not one.
Mhm.
There's policy, which is, what does the board do? What does the board require? The regulations, which are where you set standards or you tell people what they have to do. And that's where grandfathering, comes in. And then there's the user guide that we've talked about that says, where do you go? You know, if it's a vehicle thing, you go to the police, you don't come to us. If it's
Right.
another kind of thing, you know, you come here.
Right.
And so I think there are really three different documents that have slightly different audiences. And they tend to get confused when you talk about them. So that's one thing. Second thing is, there is a date now for the fall town meeting. I think it's October 13th.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think you might want to think about, do you want anything from that town meeting? And second, do you want to make a report at that town meeting? It might be a good time to not be the invisible
Yeah.
Yeah.
group.
Mhm.
If you don't have an article for it, I mean, tell them something that's going on that isn't about COVID.
Yeah.
You know, because you're gonna have the budget issue coming around later. And then my third thing is I still look for materials on Ken's that have come up at previous meetings, and I have not found it on the website. I'm almost thinking this has been going on long enough that you might just want to have a tab on the website for all the stuff that's happened in the forum.
Like the abutter sound studies and the
Right,
pen sound studies.
studies and the plans, the thing that was presented this morning.
Well, I don't even know that. I don't have that.
Yeah.
I don't know, it was discussed in this meeting, so
I know,
it's
so
going to show up
I have to get
in the minutes eventually. Anyway, that was my list for you, and I didn't list them all.
Good job. Thanks, Tim. All right. I move that we adjourn at 10:48. I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's two contracts, I think.